universities as well. So, you know, at some point in your research and your creative work, you're going to discover or create something that might have some use outside of your laboratory. And universities worldwide now create a culture of entrepreneurship so that you can take these ideas and creativities outside of your lab. You can liberate them from out of your lab, and maybe they might have some value to wider society. I've learned to read minds in Brazil, and I can hear some of you thinking, so what? You know, I'm here to do my PhD or my master's. My job is to publish my research. FAPESP, God bless them, you know, they funded me to be here, all right? They expect you to publish, all right? Academics here, I can hear you thinking as well, publish or perish. FAPESP needs me to publish, otherwise I won't get my next grant. So why should we bother innovating? Well, my personal opinion is I'm really lucky to have the job that I have. I'm really fortunate to do what I do. But someone's got to pay at the end of the day. Someone pays. And if we think about FAPESP, who pays? The taxpayer. So I think I have an obligation, a moral obligation, to at least attempt to try and take some of my creativity and discoveries, liberate them from the laboratory, and hopefully they might have some kind of application to wider society. I think I have an obligation to do that, at least make an attempt. So today I'm going to talk to you about how I've navigated university innovation and entrepreneurship, and the example really is in women's personal health care. So the overview then of my talk will be just a general introduction to what university commercialization means, because it's a wild beast. It means different things to different people. Then I'll focus on what the microbiome is, what happens when we get a disruption of the microbiome, which is known as dysbiosis, and how might we recover from this imbalance. And the example I'll give you, this is an engineering term that I've learned, design development process. How can we turn a prebiotic, so this is the food that microorganisms use to live on, how can we take this prebiotic, turn it into a medical device to achieve recovery from a state of dysbiosis? And here we're talking about the female vagina, okay? Microbiome of the female vagina. And as I go through the talk, what I hope I might be able to do is to stimulate you to start thinking differently about your science. You know, I was saying to the others earlier today, you know, we're taught that science has to be, you know, hypothesis-driven and hypothesis-generating. That's wonderful, yeah, that's really good, particularly if you do it well. But when we talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, we're talking about disruptive science here. We're talking about big leaps in understanding. It's great to have these little incremental, you know, movements in science. That's wonderful, okay? But leave that to the generic companies. You'll never get something on the market unless there's been a huge jump in thinking, okay? So I call that disruptive science. And I'll be talking to you then about my spin-out company, which is called W2T Life, or Women to Treatment, okay? W2T, Women to Treatment. And we have another company, a trading company called Mia Medicina, and I'll explain why we have a separate trading company later on as well. All right, so I've already given you some of my own opinions, so I should give you a disclaimer now as well. Everything that I'll be talking about today is my own opinion, all right? It's not necessarily the views or opinions of King's College London, University College London, because the innovation I'll be talking to you about really actually is a really strange one. It comes from two universities working together, fancy that, okay? And certainly not the views of USB, FAPESB, or even my own company. All right? It's solely my own opinions. You may agree with me, you may disagree with me, but no one will be cancelled. All right? Everything I'll be talking to you about is being disclosed in a patent, and that includes Brazil as well. All right? We have patent protection here too. All right. What do I know about commercialization? Well, I've already taken a product to market. As the kind introduction said, I'm a microbiologist by training, supposedly, and I spent about 10 years working on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia doing bioprospecting. And during that work, I discovered how photosynthetic organisms protect themselves from sunlight. So I discovered the molecules they use as natural sunscreens. And we turned this into an anti-aging moisturizing cream with antioxidant activity, the world's first biodegradable moisturizing cream. So this is on the market now. It's called Dermagi, or Dermatological Magic, apparently is what it's called, by this company Ethics. So you can buy it online, $380 for 50 grams. Cheap at half the price, I think. Cheap at half the price. So I know a little bit about taking an idea into the lab and then onto the market, all right? I've done it before. So if we start thinking about commercialization, what does it mean? It means different things to different people, particularly in a university setting. So whether you have a cosmetic, whether you have a medical device, whether you have a medicinal product, whether you have an in vitro diagnostic, you all start off the same way, at the same place in the university. You have an idea, you have a problem, you solve it, and you think, wow, that's never been done before. So what you do is you go to your technology transfer office, your TTO, and you say to them, look, I've had this great idea, wonderful solution, can we do something with it? And they're going to ask you two questions. Has it been done before? And is there a market for it? So usually we can answer, well, no, it hasn't been done before. But is there a market for it? Come on, we're scientists. How would we know? Okay? So that's the first challenge we have to get over. We have to start thinking about what is out there in the world. So it's not always easy. But if we can answer yes to both of those questions, then the university will spend a little bit of money on you to get an initial patent file. So this gives you a priority date, and this gives you the start of your protection. All right? Start of your protection. However, the university has spent money on you. That means they're in debt. And universities don't like being in debt. They want to get their money back. So what they want to do is license your intellectual property. The other thing then that they don't tell you, and I'm going to smash this romance, okay, is that you've got to find a company to license the intellectual property to. They're not going to do it for you. So on top of all the science you have to do, if you're an academic, your grant applications, your teaching, you now have to go out and find a company to license your intellectual property to. It's not easy, and you only have 12 months to do it, okay? From the initial filing date, you have 12 months to do something with that intellectual property, or you lose it. So what happens then if you can't find a company? Well, again, the university is still in debt. They want to get their money back. How are they going to do that? Well, they offer the IP to you. Will you take it on? In other words, will you pay them back? That's what they're looking for. And this is the state where you can have a startup business. So you can create a startup company, but then it's totally on you to find an investor, okay, to take your idea through to what you think might be the market. Again, I'm going to smash a romantic idea here. Seldom does anyone in a university take an idea into the hands of a consumer, okay? Usually what happens is you take your idea to a point where you run out of money, and you have to then sell it on to a larger company. That's your exit, usually, in a startup business, okay? Who do you sell it on to? Well, it's a business person. Business people have a very different idea about what commercialization means. They don't care about the science. They trust you to tell them that the pattern is indestructible. All they want to know is there someone in India or China who could do the same thing cheaper? That's all they want to know. And when do I get my money back? So if I give you 20 million reais, when am I going to get that back at a profit? That's all they want to know. Really what they're going to do is they're going to take your idea as a prototype. They'll start thinking about scale up, distribution, marketing, sales, all those things that we have absolutely no idea about as scientists. That's the kind of thing that people in the business school do, all right? You do a degree in this kind of stuff, okay? So again, we all have this romantic idea that if we have an idea, we're going to take it all the way into the hands of the consumer. It doesn't happen. As academics, we exit the process really, really quickly. Because of this, I think that we're incumbent to manage expectations, particularly of younger people. You know, you all have inquiring minds. I think as an academic, I have a duty to protect you during this system. And as I said, the universities typically achieve commercialization by licensing the intellectual property either to something that already exists or formation of a startup. Rarely does the spin-out take the product into the hands of the consumer. All right? This is very disappointing, usually for people working at the bench, because they have this romantic idea that they can take something all the way to market. The business person, as I said, thinks about commercialization. So mass production, distribution, marketing, sales, that kind of thing. The kind of stuff that you can't do, okay? You cannot do it, right? You're not equipped to do that. But the university must recover its money, all right? It's not going to be in debt. So it can recover its costs rather than incurring, maintaining these fees. Because it's not just a one-off cost. You have to keep on paying every year, okay? Which is very expensive. So they can license the fee. There can be a fee on exit of the licensee. They can sell the IP from under your feet, because remember now, particularly academics, what you're doing is part of your contract. It's part of your everyday work. So although you might be an inventor, you don't own the patent, okay? Students, I don't know how the law works here in this country, but you have a little bit more protection. What you're doing is not part of a proper job, okay? So you have some kind of ownership. So if you're an inventor on the patent, you do have a certain amount of ownership. But what are you going to do with that? The university will come along with a piece of paper and they'll say, sign here, please. And you're going to say, what am I signing? You're signing your rights away. But what are you going to do? Pin your patent application up in, put it in a frame and put it on the wall. Yeah? It's not going to go anywhere, so you might as well sign it over to the university. But you are signing your rights away. So the university, without you even knowing, could sell your IP. Okay? If a big company like Bayer or Glaxo come along, they can just sell it. So I think it's really important that you know, as staff and students, okay, that typically you're going to exit early at the licensing stage. So just make sure you know what your rights are if you're going to go along this route, okay? So let's move on now to the application. So this is microbes, microbiota, and microbiomes. So as humans then, we are completely covered in microorganisms on us and in us. It's a real jungle there, okay, of different viruses, bacteria, protozoa, algae, and fungi. I'll also include invertebrates in that as well, okay, invertebrates. But we have a whole zoo going on us and in us. And the organisms that we can grow are known as the microbiota, but many organisms are recalcitrant to laboratory culture. So to capture all of the microbial life, we refer to that as the microbiome. I use the terms interchangeably, so, don't beat me with a stick if I use the wrong term now, okay? Everyone uses the terms interchangeably, all right? And I'm no different. But depending on who you talk to, the vast majority of microorganisms, in terms of numbers and species diversity, are found in the gut. So the gut microbiome, okay? Gut microbiome. There's also microorganisms living on the skin. So as a company, we're interested in the microbiome of the skin, but more importantly, on the extension of the skin into body orifices. So it's the extension of the skin into a body orifice where it becomes the mucous membrane. So here today, I'll be talking to you about the vaginal microbiome. So, lots of companies, and there's been lots of studies, have been looking at the microbiomes of individuals. Healthy individuals, individuals who are sick, individuals who are predisposed to illness. And they found differences. So much so, it's led now to this thesis that microbiota are really important at maintaining our host homeostasis. So microorganisms are key to our health. If we have an imbalance in these microbes, which is called dysbiosis, then we can be predisposed to certain diseases. And some of these diseases are very common indeed. For example, diabetes, cancer, some types of liver disease. So the rationale then for many companies is, well, if you have an imbalance, a dysbiosis, to treat the diseases, why not go back to a point of balance? That seems quite sensible, doesn't it? It seems like a very new thing to be saying. But actually, this idea has been around a long time. So 1907, Metchnikoff, the immunologist, recognized this in the gut microbiome, that you could replace harmful microbiomes or microbes with useful microbes. So the idea of redressing this imbalance has been around a long time. And now there's so many companies out there, they use a variety of different strategies to achieve this rebalance. I'm not going to go through all of these, but what we're interested in is what called the prebiotics. So these then are specific components then of the food that we eat, or components of what we might secrete that's used as food source by the microorganisms. So if we have a deficiency then in something that we might eat or a compound that we might secrete that changes the microbiome, let's replace it. That's the strategy. And now all of these types of treatments are known as live biotherapeutics by the FDA. So these are recognizable therapeutic classes now by the FDA, recognized last year with the approval of fecal microbiota transplantation for treatment of C. difficile infection. Okay? So recognized by FDA. So moving on then to my company. So our trading company then is Mia Medicina, and we specialize then in women's personal health care. So thinking about the vaginal microbiota, the vagina then of human females has a diverse array of microorganisms associated with it, with a variety of different functions. But the key function to maintaining vaginal health is maintaining a protective acidic pH, okay? An acidic pH. How is that achieved? Well, humans have developed an intimate relationship through evolution with bacteria called lactobacilli. No other non-human primate does this. This is specific to humans, okay? Human female vagina. So these lactobacilli then produce lactic acid, which drops the pH of the vagina, which is protective. Now, there are certain types or certain species of lactobacilli that can be more common than others. And we have species such as Lactobacillus crispus, Lactobacillus gasseri, Lactobacillus inus. And these bacteria tend to be associated with the vagina of women who don't often have infection. Okay? They don't often have infections of the vagina. Women that have this polymicrobial flora, so lots of different microorganisms, very uncharacterized, and Lactobacillus jenseni, if that dominates, this tends to be very unstable vaginal microbiomes, and women with this phenotype are more likely to experience more often episodes of infection. Okay? So when I say healthy vagina and unstable vagina, I want to make it really clear this is very woman specific. All right? Very woman specific. So these are just generalizations that we talk about. All right? Generalizations. So how does the dysbiosis come about then? Well, as part of this unique evolutionary relationship between lactobacilli and humans, it's based on the production of glycogen by the vaginal epithelia. So in a healthy situation, then, the vaginal epithelia will start producing glycogen, and this is secreted into the lumen of the vagina. The key evolutionary relationship here is that lactobacilli will use glycogen as a sole carbon source. So they will ferment glycogen into lactic acid. Some of them will also produce hydrogen peroxide. So this acidic condition in the lumen then is the protective effect. It controls overgrowth of other commensal organisms and protects infection from exogenous organisms as well. What happens in a state of dysbiosis is, for whatever reason, and the reasons are many, the vaginal epithelia ceases to produce glycogen. Yeah? Ceases to produce it, or the rates are very, very low. So if you don't have much glycogen in the vaginal lumen, then the lactobacilli don't have much food source to grow on. So what happens to their numbers? They go down. I was very naive when I came to this. I kind of thought to myself, well, there's no food, so there'll be no lactobacilli. We'll completely get rid of them. As I'll show you in a few minutes, that is not the case, and it actually is the basis for our therapeutic treatment. Okay? So what happens then is that the lactobacilli numbers drop off. This allows other organisms then to overgrow, and the pH goes up. Okay? And then we typically have vaginal infections. What kind of infections are we talking about? Well, I've just picked 3 out here. Okay, these have worldwide high prevalence caused by this dysbiosis. So we can have Candida albicans yeast infection. So this is vulvovaginal candidiasis, or thrush. We can also have Gardnerella vaginosis, overgrowth. This leads to a condition called BV, bacterial vaginosis, BV. Lots of organisms actually cause this. Or we can have infection with protozoa as well. So these are really common infections in women, worldwide prevalence, okay, worldwide. As a company then, we're very interested not just in these infections, but any other disease that might be caused by an imbalance in the vaginal microbiota. And we've picked out loads of these here, okay? And you can see that, you know, these range from across the life course as well. So when we say W2T, women to treatment, we really mean that. So, you know, this is pre-puberty through to reproductive age, and then into menopause as well, and also end of life as well. So end of life vaginal atrophy too. But just considering here, BV and thrush, okay? This is what I'm going to talk about. Let's think about the market opportunity, because this is a talk about commercialization, okay? I'd like to say we're developing something for the good of womankind, which of course we are, but we also want to make some money too. This is commercialization here. So the first thing you have to think about yourself is, okay, I've got a good idea, but is there a commercial space for it? What is your market opportunity? So it's estimated then that something like 75% of all women will have at least one episode of BV or thrush in their lifetime, okay? Over 30% of women at any one time will test positive for symptoms of BV, 30%. So in the UK, that's equivalent to 12 million women at any one time will have symptoms of BV. We don't have the rates for thrush. It's going to be much higher, okay? Also, what we know as well is that there's a high rate of relapse. So even if you have treatment for the BV or the thrush, there's a high rate of rebound. Typically, 30% of women will relapse within 3 months with another episode of BV. So it's highly prevalent and it's recurring as well. So treatments that are available, antibiotics, don't work very well, okay? Don't work well. If we have a look here at the market size, well, the numbers speak for themselves. The market is growing, and there's lots of reasons why the market is growing. One really good reason is women's health now is taking a priority. It's something that we are now talking about and we're doing something about, okay? Particularly in cultures where before talking about women's health issues was a bit of a cultural taboo, so particularly in Southeast Asia, for example, okay? In our own studies, what we found as well is just talking to women, something like 62% of women didn't know if they had an abnormal discharge, whether this would be BV or thrush. So a large proportion of women had no idea what was causing their abnormal discharge. So what treatment option do they have? They can go to the pharmacy, but what over-the-counter treatment do you pick if you don't know what you've got? Trial and error. And of course that can lead to a lot of suffering and embarrassment. Okay? Because most women tend not to go to their physician for treatment because of the embarrassing consequences of these infections. They would rather self-treat. So what we actually see then is if you go to the pharmacy, there's usually some kind of test kit to measure your vaginal pH, if you know how to use it, right? So if it's a high pH, well, you'd likely have thrush. So next then to that pH test kit will be a thrush treatment. If it's a low pH then, sorry, I got that wrong. If it's a high pH, it's going to be BV. If it's a low pH, it's going to be thrush. So you have the treatments next to the pH test strip, okay? But as I said before, relapse rates are really, really high. So what we've decided to do is we've decided to come up with a single treatment that will treat women irrespective of whether they have BV or thrush. So it takes out the guesswork for women. So they can just go to the pharmacy and there's a single treatment irrespective of what causes their abnormal discharge. Okay? That's our marketing approach. Again, our approach is looking at why is there a dysbiosis. And if we go along the lines or the thought process that it's because there's a loss of glycogen, let's replace the glycogen. And that's what we do. So in our formulation then, we use a glycogen mimetic isolated from Pacific oyster. So this is my marine biology coming back in again, okay? So we have Pacific oyster then, so the mussel contains glycogen, and this is extracted, okay, from the mussel. So Pacific oysters that are grown commercially, sustainably, eco-friendly, yeah, you get where all the claims come from on the packaging, right? Yeah, so we use these sources, and of course this is edible as well. So it's likely not to be toxic to you as well. So our preclinical data then supports our lead opportunity, all right? Lead opportunity that we have a single treatment which we brand as called Duo, okay? So the brand name is Duo for bacterial vaginosis and thrush vaginal treatment gel. So single gel for 2 indications. There's only one product on the market worldwide that currently claims this. So there's a market opportunity, okay? Or what we call lead opportunity. So we have basically a mucoadhesive gel. So this is methyl cellulose, and this then is impregnated with the glycogen. And this is just a 5-gram scale bench formulation put together by our pharmaceutics person, Catherine Toulouse from UCL Pharmacy. It's so simple, even I can do this, right? It's so easy, I've done it. All right, that's how simple this formulation is. So then we wanted to test it. So we wanted to get some, at least in vitro data. So for this then, we went to a walk-in sexual health clinic in central London called the Mortimer Market Clinic. And this has a footfall of about 50,000 people per year. It's a totally anonymous walk-in sexual health clinic in central London, okay? So you don't even have to give your name. It's open 7 days a week, I think 12 hours a day. Okay, so lots of people use it. So what we did then was recruit women, okay, that had abnormal discharge but were clinically diagnosed as having BV. I'll just talk about BV results today in the interest of time. And Diagnosis of BV is really easy. You just look down the microscope for epithelial cells covered in bacteria. These are known as clue cells. All right? It's very easy to do. You can do it in clinic. It's really easy. We took 2 lower vaginal swabs from each woman. One swab was put into our control media, which was just artificial vaginal fluid with glucose as the carbon source. And then the other swab was put into the artificial vaginal fluid, but with our formulation. And we incubated overnight anaerobically, and then we plated out. So on the left-hand side then, that's what the formulations look like before incubation. Then after incubation, you get some cloudiness, always a good sign, okay? Always a great sign. And then we plate out onto selective media, okay? In this case, this is for group B streptococcus. And you can see here, this is before treatment, and we have these red colonies, very typical of GBS. And on the right-hand side, they've disappeared after treatment. And hopefully you can see, if you count the blue colonies, which are lactobacilli, we have an increase in number. Okay? So this is very basic microbiology, culture-dependent microbiology, really easy to do. So our culture-dependent microbiology supports a shift in lactobacilli numbers towards a healthy microbiota. Here's just a few patients just to show you. So on this side then it's our control, and we don't recover very many lactobacilli. This is the disease state, and this is what you expect, a collapse in lactobacilli numbers in BV. Yeah, you expect it. But then after treatment, we recover many, many more lactobacilli. So this tends to suggest then that incorporation of glycogen into our mucoadhesive gel, okay, supports the regrowth of lactobacilli to numbers that you might expect in a healthy situation. Okay, these numbers are what you would expect. Some molecular work here. This is just 16S rRNA sequencing, like amplicon sequencing. You know, no great surprise here, like on how to do it. You know, everyone does it now. So before treatment then, surprisingly, there's something like, what was it, 71.4% lactobacilli in the disease state. This really surprised me, because I thought in dysbiosis you get a collapse of lactobacilli. But it's not the case. You get a reduction. So there's still a residual population. That's great, because it means you can have recovery. Okay? I didn't realize that the balance was so fine between disease-free to disease state. It's just a small shift in numbers, a really small shift. And you can see here then that we've got something like nearly 25% bacteria causing BV. After treatment, we increased the lactobacilli numbers up to like nearly 85.5% and reduced down the BV causing organisms. So again, from 71% in the disease state to 85% in disease-free. It's only a small shift between healthy and disease. No one has ever shown this before. Okay? No one ever really appreciated this, that it's only a small shift that can put you into the disease state. What about species then? So here I'm going to test you then on those species names from the slide before. If you remember, okay, in the disease state, so in an unstable vagina, the lactobacilli usually are this Lactobacilli jenseni, and we can see this here in the disease state swabs, okay? Populated with L. jenseni, and some good bacteria, some L. inners, some. After treatment though, we switch. We start to see a switch. Oh, sorry. We start to see a switch, okay? The numbers of bad lactobacilli are going down, and the numbers of good lactobacilli are starting going up. So our gel then, containing the glycogen, not only increases the number of lactobacilli, but we can switch the species to more friendly lactobacilli. Okay? Again, just looking at some physicochemical parameters, what we showed then was that our lactobacilli were actually metabolizing the glycogen. So if we just have a look then at pH, so greater than pH 4.5 is indicative of BV, and in our controls you see we have a high pH here. After treatment, the pH drops. Why does the pH drop? Well, we hope it's because the lactobacilli are producing lactic acid, and sure enough, that's exactly what is happening here. Key thing to look at though, it's only the D isomer, so D-lactic acid. This is very characteristic of lactic acid bacteria. They don't produce the L isomer. So if you detect the D isomer in vaginal fluids, it has to come from lactobacilli, okay? Has to come from them. And if you remember, I said some organisms also produce hydrogen peroxide, and in this patient, we actually see that too. So our gel then, from our in vitro preclinical data, supports the regrowth of the residual lactobacilli. We can switch the species population as well, and we're actively metabolizing the glycogen into something that is protective, typically this low pH, okay, low pH. So, next thing you have to do when you're trying to convince an investor to give you some money is you have to do a competitor analysis. The first thing the investor is going to say is, what else is on the market? Are you better than what is on the market? So, we looked at what was on the market, so the OTC, over-the-counter gels, they typically contain lactic acid. And why wouldn't they? Intuitively, if you have no glycogen and you're not producing lactic acid and your pH is high, you want to drop the pH, so just add lactic acid, okay? That seems a very intuitive thing to do. Well, not to us, okay? Because we looked then at our numbers. So we just compared our formulation against best on the market and looked at the numbers of lactobacilli, and you can see, best on the market, we couldn't recover any at all. Why was that? Well, if we investigate the patients then that take the over-the-counter medication, usually what happens is that they stop taking the medication after about 3 days. It's a 7-day course. The reason they take it is that they can't tolerate the treatment because of the acid. The acid burns, causes irritation and actually bleeding as well. You're putting on an acid of pH around about 3.5. That's carb battery acid pH, okay? What we found is that in a large number of these women, it sterilizes the vagina. So it actually kills everything in there. So nature does not like a space in microbiology. So you have then the vagina epithelia completely open for colonization. And guess what it gets colonized with? Thrush. Okay? So a lot of women then develop thrush after this. So although intuitively adding acid seems like a good thing to do, counterintuitively it's not a good thing to do. So we don't add acid. Okay? Our gel mirrors a healthy vagina, so slightly near neutral. Most over-the-counter gels add a small amount of the glycogen, all right? A small amount. But you can see here, if it's less than 1%, even your carrier, the methyl cellulose, okay, has an effect, a better effect than having glycogen. So again, it doesn't seem like the best on market works very well. So we have a much higher percentage of glycogen that mirrors what you see in a typically healthy vaginal fluid, okay, around about 1.5%. So our strategy then is we have a high pH, a high amount of glycogen, and we know there's a residual pool of lactobacilli. So we allow those lactobacilli to ferment that glycogen slowly, to slowly drop the pH and increase their numbers. So it's a much more holistic way of treatment, rather than just throwing in the acid straight away, which seems to be very counterintuitive, actually leading to overgrowth of thrush. Over-the-counter gels contain preservatives. So you have to have preservatives then to maintain the microbiology stability of your formulations, your gels and your creams, to give yourself a shelf life, okay? We don't have any preservative. So how do we maintain our shelf life? So all of the competent authorities throughout the world, for example, Anvisa, have a list of approved preservatives to maintain stability of your formulations. So these are an approved list of preservatives, so they're called preservatives. But you have other compounds that are not on that list that are preservatives. So if you use those, you're preservative free, right? Get it? Yeah. Yeah? So we can then claim that we are preservative-free, but actually we do add preservatives, but they're not called preservatives according to Anvisa. All right? So we're preservative-free. We don't add any antibiotics. Lots of gels on the market have antibiotics or antifungal agents. We don't have that. So we're not going to drive antibiotic resistance. And we use the same delivery system as well as other over-the-counter products. So our delivery system, which is a single-use plastic applicator, is exactly the same as what is on the market. Okay? It's a generic applicator, all right, that you can buy from plastic companies. It's generic. Okay? The advantage of using the same as what is on the market means that women already find it acceptable to use, and so does Anvisa. Okay? So if you're doing the same as somebody else who already has market approval, you're more likely to get market approval rather than doing something brand new. If you do something brand new, Anvisa are going to question you, why? Prove it. Whereas you say, okay, no, I'm using the same thing. Oh, that's all right then. Yeah? That's how it works for approval. So let's talk just a little bit about our technology transfer history then. How did we go about protecting what we have? And what happened? What was our story? So the first part then was getting our priority date. So we went to our technology transfer office, convinced them this was brand new and that there was a market for it, and they gave us a priority date with the UK Patent Office. We then have 12 months then to find a company out there that will take this on. 12 months, and we had to do it ourselves like everyone does, and we couldn't do it. So King's and UCL turned around and said, well, you can't do it, we'll abandon the IP. Bad day in the lab, right? Down to the pub, right? Bad day. What happened then is we actually started talking to people who have done this before. And that's really important. If I can give you some advice, talk to people who have gone down this route and see what they have done and the mistakes that they have made. And we started talking to a company, or the founder of a company, and he advised us, on things that we should be doing, like get more data. And he actually said, we will help you. We'll help you at least pay your legal bills so that you can pay off the university. That was enough then for UCL and King's to refile the priority date for us. Just saying that we had someone who would pay their bill, all right, was enough to get a new priority date. We would also then advise to set up our own company, to go straight for a spin-out. And because the universities had abandoned us the first time, they really weren't that interested in us. No, seriously, what happened was that, this really is a medical device. Universities only have a small portfolio of what they can fund. So at King's and UCL, it's small molecule therapeutics or in vitro diagnostics. That's what they're interested in. Anything else, sorry, we can't do it, good luck. What it meant, though, was that we got a really good deal on the licensing agreement. Okay? They didn't take any equity in our company. So we got quite a good deal for being abandoned. Okay? So we got our priority date then, and then you have another 18 months then to do something with it, all right? To get funding to take it to some kind of next level. This is called the PCT, so Patent Cooperation Treaty. This gives you protection then in 150 countries worldwide. But it only gives you 18 months then to really do something with your invention. After the 18 months, the PCT runs out and it's a free-for-all. Yeah? Your invention no longer is protected. And there are people out there who are scouring the literature to look for new ideas. Yeah? Lots of people looking for new ideas. So, altogether then, you have 30 months from your priority date through to when your PCT runs out. And what we did then was we were given a worldwide exclusive licensing fee by UCL and King's. King's actually then dropped out and transferred execution of the rights to UCL solely. That's great, because you're not dealing with two universities then, two bureaucracies, you're just dealing with one, yeah? Which is bad enough, right? Rather than two. So after then 30 months, your PCT is published then as a world patent, but then, you're no longer protected. You then have to decide what countries and territories you're going to protect your intellectual property with. And just a point to mention here, the examiner at this PCT stage viewed what we had done as novel and inventive. So it doesn't get much better than that when you're talking to an investor, okay? So we decided then to file in these countries and territories, including Brazil. This is when it gets really expensive, because you have to pay to file in each country. You have to pay for an examiner to look at your patent application in each country, and you have to do it every year. It's not a one-off payment. So this gets really expensive. How much did this cost? About £40,000 sterling. Yeah? So each year we have to find £40,000 to do this. Okay? Okay. All right. Where do we stand? You can't read that right there. So we're not a medicinal product. Okay? We are a medical device, a Class 2B medical device under European legislation. Why aren't we a medicinal product? Well, because the glycogen has no pharmacological effect on human cells. The glycogen is fermented by the lactobacilli to produce an acid that affects the environment, has no pharmacological effect at all. For that reason, we have a medical device. Also, what we put the glycogen in, the methylcellulose carrier, forms a barrier, okay, in the lumen of the vagina and the epithelial surface. So it's a physical effect there, which pushes it into the medical device category, okay? So that's why we have that. Why is it important? Because regulatory approval of a medical device is not as high as a medicine. In fact, before 2017, you didn't even have to show that your medical device worked. All you had to do was show that it was safe for use. You didn't even have to show that it worked. Now, after 2017, you have to show efficacy. So, to show efficacy in humans, you have to do a clinical trial. So, we're at the stage now where we're proving that the gel is safe for human use. So, to do that, we have to have a manufacturer under GMP conditions, good manufacturing practice conditions. So, there's lots of companies out there that will do this for you, okay? Contract manufacturers that will produce your product under GMP conditions. When they're doing that, they will put together what's called a manufacturing dossier. And this covers everything from quality control of your raw materials all the way through to what pen you're using and, you know, all sorts of things. There's about 150 quality assurance tests for putting a gel into a plastic applicator. All right? And this all has to be written down and validated, all right, before you can get permission to go into clinical trial or even to go onto the market. And this is known as a manufacturing dossier. So now we have this company here, Biocosmes in Italy, and we're in phase 1, okay? So we're designing our history file, which is the first part of the dossier, but really we're going up to 3 kilogram stage of production, sufficient to provide material for a stability study. So a stability study then, we show that the product is stable. It doesn't break down into anything that's going to be toxic when it's used. It doesn't interact with the plastic applicator, because you do the stability study in situ in the applicator. So it doesn't do anything to the plastics as well. And we do this for at least 6 months, because this is our trial length, okay? 6 months. And this is the applicator then, okay? And yeah, so that's the stage that we're at, so up to a 3 kilogram state. If you don't know what a production facility looks like, this is what the inside of our facility is like. So here we have different sizes then of reactor or mixers, as I call them. Here it goes 10, 100 and 1,000 kilograms, and this is 80,000 kilogram scale, okay, 80,000 scale, so industrial scale. And what happens then, because everything is clean, then your finished product is just pumped into these blue canisters here, okay? So it's all maintained clean, and these are just pushed out into the next section of the hall, which is the filling station. So again, you can see here then that your gel is then pumped into the filling machine, and then out at the end actually is the product. The product is the gel in the applicator in the box. That's what the product is called, okay, for regulatory approval. Lots of quality assurance processes going on here, but I guess the most important one is there gel in your applicator, right? So we do that by weighing, and this is inline weighing, okay? So every packet then is weighed, okay? That's the last part of quality assurance. I'll tell you a story about the company. So what happened was that the market leader is made by Bayer. And Bayer, of course, you think have their own facilities, but they don't. They actually contract out their manufacturer to this company, Rolf Kullgren, okay, Rolf Kullgren in Sweden. There's another company called Venture Life that own Biocosmes, and Biocosmes make their own product as well. Biocosmes wanted to increase their production capacity, so they bought Rolf Kullgren on the condition for Bayer that Bayer could still have their product made. So in a single factory then, we're having two competitive products being produced. It's the way the world works, okay? Everything is done under contract. And now we come along as well, so now there's three products produced by the same company, okay, going onto the market. Everyone knows this happens, but everything is controlled by legal agreements. I like to basically, go and speak to people face to face rather than doing things online. So I just said to Biocosmes, look, why don't I just come and see you? We can talk about the deal, talk about how things are done. They said, yeah, get a flight then to Milan. So I took a flight to Milan, and I didn't bother looking at the address. I just thought it's going to be one of those really horrible industrial estates on the outskirts of Milan. And they sent a car for me. So I got into the car, and the car started driving, and I saw signs for Milan going that way, but we were going that way. I thought, where am I going? I ended up in Lake Como. That's where the company is, okay, in Lake Como, beautiful Lake Como. So of course, they got the contract. Okay, so we're now thinking about our clinical trial. And again, it's all very romantic when we start thinking about it as academics or students. I want to do my clinical trial. I want to be leading a clinical trial. Don't do it, all right? You can't possibly do it. The logistics of a clinical trial are enormous, okay? Particularly if you're doing it over many different sites, over many different countries. You have to think about the logistics of getting your product to each one of the sites. You have to make sure they're labeled correctly. If you're doing a blind study, for example, you don't want the wrong labeling going with the wrong product. You also have to deal with people, medics, all right? Not so easy, because they tend not to do what you tell them to do when you tell them to do it, okay? So it's not easy. But there are companies out there, CROs, clinical research organizations, that will do everything for you. So that's what we've done. So we've taken on this company, Premier Research, and we've taken them on because they specialize in women's health and in devices. So they have a track record. This is important for regulatory approval. No point going to a company that's never done it before, because the regulator will turn around and say, they've not done it before, are you sure they did it right? Whereas if you go to a company that's done it before, then they have a reputation. So they're known to be able to do this sort of thing. So reputation matters in this game. Also, they're based in London, so it's easy for me to go and talk to them. Here's our clinical trial then. 150 patients, phase 2B trial, and we're doing it in 3 countries, okay? So it's multi-center across 3 countries: United Kingdom, France, and Czech Republic. The advantage of United Kingdom means we're looking for regulatory approval in the UK because of Brexit. We're no longer part of Europe. We have our own classification system. We're doing it in France and the Czech Republic because they are part of the European Union, so we get European approval. And doing it in France and the UK means we have a high ethnic diversity of women who we'll be able to recruit. So these vaginal infections are very ethnically specific as well. So it's important that we have a mix of ages and ethnicities too. We're not stratifying the women by age or ethnicity. We don't really care about it, but we do want to incorporate it in our recruitment, okay? And again, the countries that you choose are important when it comes to reputation. The Czech Republic, you think, why there? Prague is a lovely place, right? But why there? Because there are a lot of studies that have been done in the Czech Republic. So they have a reputation for being able to do these types of clinical trials. So that's why we pick these countries. It's open label and we randomize. So basically the women come in and consent, and then they're diagnosed. If they have BV, they're in one arm. If they have thrush, they're in the other arm. And then other women will be randomized into a control group. So we'll be testing our product against BV and thrush in 2 arms, but then we have a comparator. Remember what I said, there's a single product on the market now that claims to treat BV and thrush. That is going to be our comparator, okay? Now, we're going for inferiority, okay? We don't want to say to the regulator, look at our results, we're better than what's on the market. That's a huge barrier to get over in a clinical trial, that you're better than what's on the market. Of course, we want to say that, all right? But no, all we want to say is we're no worse than. We're no worse than what's on the market, okay? So we have an inferiority trial, non-inferiority trial. We're starting recruiting in February 2025 with submission to a notifying body in March 2026. So it's going to take this long. So I mentioned Anvisa. This is a competent authority. So every country in the world legally has an authority called a competent authority that says what can be on the market and what can't. They are so busy doing this kind of work that they subcontract it out to different companies known as notifying bodies. Okay? So we use a notifying body, and we keep several on the go because, again, they're busy. So when we're ready to submit, we'll say, well, to the UK authority, are you busy? And they'll say, no. Okay, we'll use you then. Yeah? If we go to France, are you busy? Yes, we are. Okay, we won't use you. Okay? So it's all about time. Remember, the investor wants their money back. So you're not going to wait around, because it takes a year, once you submit your documentation, to get your approval or not. 1 year. Okay? So our decision then on getting our UK and European marking can take us a year. So it's going to be the 3rd quarter then of 2027. And that's where I'm going to exit. That's my exit strategy, and that's why we have a trading company, Mia Medicina. So we will sell the asset, Mia Medicina, to whoever wants to buy it, okay? For tax reasons then, we keep it separate from the main company because we have other things we want to do. So Mia Medicina is my exit, okay? And I want to exit once I have regulatory approval. I'm not going to take this to the market. I'm going to leave this to someone else with deeper pockets than me, okay? One of the big players, Glaxo, Bayer, Pfizer, one of these, Johnson & Johnson's, one of these big companies that have a distribution system, that have space on the pharmacy shelves, okay? I'm going to exit. Or will I? I'm a scientist, aren't I? I can never say never. There's always another experiment to do, isn't there? So at this stage, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to exit, but I might be really curious to see what happens next. So I don't know, all right? Don't hold me to it. But right now, I'm going to exit. Just some, in time remaining, just some lessons I've learned if you're thinking about commercialization. One reason that startups fail is that they have a lack of product to market fit. So you might think that you have the best idea and solution in the world, but if you don't have a market for it, you might as well call Nature magazine, okay? Because it's not going to go anywhere commercially, all right? You might have to what's called pivot your idea. So in our case, we started off with a BV treatment, but we had to pivot, because there's a big, lots of products in the market for BV. We pivoted to include thrush on that as well, okay? So investors like that. No clear business model, okay? Again, this is a reason why companies fail, okay? You have to understand what your target market is. You have to start thinking about pricing, sales, all the things I said in one of those first slides that we don't actually do. You have to do it in your business model to show your investor that you thought about these things. So all the things that we're not trained to do, we actually have to do for the investor, our investment deck, okay? And again, we have to think about where's your exit strategy. Again, that's not the kind of thing you're going to think about when you're starting off. When am I going to exit? all right? But the investor wants to know how long you're going to be in the game for. They're going to want to know this. Reasons why we don't have a clear business model is that we have a poor management structure. And again, we've fallen guilty of this as well, okay? So we don't have the right people doing the right jobs. We don't have people who know how to use an Excel spreadsheet, for example, like me, right? But we got a financial person in who can press one button and all the Excel spreadsheets change. It's a miracle, you know? It would take me days to do that because I would do each thing individually. So you need to have people who know what they're doing for the jobs that you need to have done, okay? Also, what we have the problem with is your original founders, okay, are not always your best business partners. They may be your best friends, but they're not business partners. So you can fall out of love with your best friend really easily, okay? So you have to think about who your business partner is going to be as well. And lastly, the main reason why startups fail is that they run out of cash, all right? They promise the investor that they can move the earth, okay, when they actually can't. They run out of money before they've taken their product to a point of exit, all right? You run out of your money. Also, this is something that you don't always hear about, but I'm going to tell you, because I think it's really important. The investors want to know how much money have you put into the business yourself. This is known as hurt money. You can't turn around to the investor and say, well, I spent hours doing this, you know. This is hours of my time, which equals 10 million reais. They're not interested in that. They want to know is how much of your own money has gone into this business. Because if you want me to put 20 million reais in, I want to see that you've put some risk in of your own money, all right? So my wife did not get her kitchen last year, all right? She may not get the bathroom this year. Right? You have to think this way. Whatever you do, don't mortgage the house, whatever you do. All right? But this is known as a skin in the business, so be prepared to offer hurt money. All right? Very uncomfortable idea, very uncomfortable. So just to summarize then, we're an academic-led, university-independent startup because our universities didn't want us, all right? So we're independent. We've put together an experienced team with complementary experiences and a record of success. That's important. You're going to an investor, they want to know that you can achieve. You know, if you're very naive at this, don't do it yourself. You're never going to get money. You have to have a group of people together who've shown that they can do it. We're specializing in women's personal health, which is called Femtech, and we have our duo formulation, which we're now moving to clinical trial. We've got strong patent protection and an exclusive license agreement to commercialize. If I decide not to exit, okay, and commercialize, the market there is $2 billion per year. Okay? So even if you have a small penetration in that, it's big business. Okay, big business. But of course, like any good company, okay, we have a pipeline of products to treat further conditions of microbiome imbalance that affect women of all ages, backgrounds, and ethnicities. And I showed you that list of about 14 different conditions that we might be going down that route of. Again, investors want to see this, that you're not what we call a one-trick pony, okay? That you only just have one thing. They want to see lots of different things, lots of ways to make money, okay? And finally then, this is our board of directors. Notice anything that's not quite right? Notice anything that's not quite right about this picture? Don't be scared to say it, I won't be offended. There's no women. We're a Femtech business, okay? Women's personal healthcare business, but we've got no women on our board, okay? This is a big problem for us. A big problem getting investment is that we don't have women on the board, and we're trying to treat women's personal healthcare here. Big problem for us. We've got a great range of ethnic mixes going on there, but at the end of the day, we're just middle-aged old men, all right? We've got no women there. So this is a big deal for us right now, holding us back for funding. We'd never launch on the stock exchange looking like this. They wouldn't allow us to do this, okay? So this is our Achilles heel right now, no women on the board, okay? So that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll take any questions if you like. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Paul. Very interesting. Something would like to ask something to Professor Paul. Professor Juliano Bicas, please.
Yeah, hi, very interesting talk. I was wondering, have you considered using also the probiotics in your formulation, like adding the lactic acid bacteria, the good ones, I mean?
We've thought about it, but decided against it, okay? Reasons for it, first of all, we would then no longer be a medical device. We would then be shifting into a medicinal product. So under current FDA regulations, if you have a live microorganism in your formulation, you are then a medicinal product, okay? So we don't want to do that. And secondly, what organisms are you going to use? Because remember what we said, this is women very specific, all right? So, you know, you could think of like some generic organism, but who's it going to work in? You could just be targeting, you know, certain populations. And again, vaginal transplantation is not a new thing, okay? It's, there's a few studies being published in Hasidic Jews, so very small communities. They've used vaginal transplantation to try and reduce the effect of late-term miscarriage and preterm birth within a small population. So likely, these women are probably genetically related to each other anyway, but even those studies showed that it didn't work very well, okay? It's possible, but I would say long way off, yeah? Good question though, good question.
Hello. So in your project, you took the route of creating a startup. Do you think it's better or worse than going the other way and sticking with the university? Or
okay, it's usually out of your hands, because remember what I said, university owns the patent, okay? So they decide what happens. So, you know, you have to go off and find a commercial partner, okay? What happens if you find Glaxo, GSK? University's going to love you for life, okay? And there's no way you're going to have a startup with that. Usually the only way you're going to get a startup is that if you convince the university that you can't find an existing commercial partner and you can be trusted to take that IP on, so you're worth the risk. Because remember, the university wants their money back as well. So the answer to that is, don't really know. Don't really know the answer, okay? But certainly universities are looking for students, especially, not so much staff, but students to spin out their work. Yeah, this entrepreneurial culture. Yeah, and here in Brazil, I mean, it's taken off dramatically with FAPESP funding, BEPI funding, I think it is. You have PP funding, whatever it is. Yeah, it's taken off dramatically here. Yeah. I would say do it, right? I would say do it.
Gabriel.
What have you got to lose, you know? I can tell you, your family hate you, all right? My family, you know, they haven't talked to me for ages, like, because you have to do all of this on top of your day job as well. And so, you know, it comes at a price. It does come at a price. It's not easy.
Hi, how long does it take from the in vitro analysis to clinical trials?
Sorry, to the...
How long does it take from in vitro analysis to clinical trials?
So clinical trial,
Yes.
well, it depends how much money you've got, okay? It's down to money at this point, okay? But yeah, typically then, the time it takes, so you need to have time then to put together your manufacturing dossier, you need to have time then to put together your clinical trial and all the other documentation. So it could take, looking at our timeline, it should take under a year. Okay, but you have to get your partners in place. So you need to find someone who's going to make your product, first of all, under your GMP conditions. And you also, I would strongly suggest getting a clinical trial, a CRO, on board as well. Don't do it through a university, is my advice here. Universities, particularly if you have like a teaching medical school, hospital, will have clinical trial units associated with them. My advice, and I know I'm on camera, is like, don't do it with the university. It takes a huge amount of time, you know, for university bureaucracy to get things done, and they charge you a lot of money as well. So if you're talking about this kind of money, you might as well go outside to a CRO, okay? University would love you if you're doing a clinical trial in the university hospital. Looks great for PR, but in terms of business sense, it takes a long time, and your investor may not want that kind of time. So I know I'm on camera saying this, but yeah, think carefully about who your business partners are, whether you really want to do it through the university or you want to pay extra money and do it faster outside, I would say. How much does a clinical trial cost? R1, 2.5 million. They're the kind of prices you're talking about. But you're talking about, you know, probably about half that, so, you know, over $1 million if you did it through the university clinical trial unit. You're talking these numbers, okay? Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Do you think that the last lessons you presented in your presentation, do you think that are useful for other countries?
Everyone, yeah.
Yeah.
These are exactly the same things that everyone falls down on, you know. These are the things that I've fallen down on, so I can share it with you through bitter experience. But it's no different from any other startup, you know. Poor business model, you know, incorrect financial deck, poor business partners who don't know what they're doing, you know, running out of money, wrong fit for the market. All these things you have to think about, yeah. And it applies to everything, everything.
Okay. So, Professor Paul Long, I would like to thank you once more. It was a pleasure have you with us, and that's it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Muito obrigado.
Bom, pessoal, então gostaria de agradecer a presença de todas e de todos nessa interessante palestra, né? E dou por encerrado esse momento. Muito obrigado e até a próxima.
Teach you all of this in this program. So I would get on to the next exercise.
saw your talk